WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Cognoscenti is WBUR's Ideas and Opinions section. It's where experts, writers, and plain old thinkers from around the region share their perspectives and experiences on a range of topics. And 2022 gave us plenty of things to ponder and reflect on. So, as the year winds down, we reached out to Cognoscenti senior editor Cloe Axelson to talk to us about 3 essays from the year that resonated within our community. Okay, Chloe, first, thank you so much for coming by, especially because this is your first time on a podcast.
It's my first time, Daryl. Number one, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Amazing win for the Common. We're making history today. So to start off this historic moment, let's get into a little bit of media literacy. Tell us more about Cognoscenti and how it differs from the rest of the newsroom.
Yeah, so Cognoscenti, as you said, is WBUR's Ideas and Opinion page. And so we have our own editorial purview, and we work exclusively with folks in the community in New England, writers and thinkers and just regular old people sharing their opinions on the news of the day. And this is our 10th anniversary year, Daryl. We've been around for 10 years now. We've published 4,700 essays by 1,100 authors and all sorts of topics from death and love and baseball and healthcare to anything in between. And I think, at our best, we're doing stuff that's deeply personal, but also adds perspective and depth to important stories that are moving in the news.
So with that, let's get into some of the essays from the year that we're going to talk about. We got 3 essays lined up. Where do you want to start first?
I think we should start with Dr. Anil Shukla's essay,
Okay.
Which we published in January of last year, January 22. We started the year covering how overwhelmed hospitals were. Mm-hmm. Back then, Anil, he's the chief emergency medicine doctor at St. Luke's, which is a community hospital in New Bedford. And at the time he wrote the essay, the COVID positivity in that community was among the highest in the state. And we really wanted him to write a first-person account of what he was seeing on every shift. Like, what was it like to actually work in a hospital that was overwhelmed? And it was beautiful and searing. And he writes about how his staff was sagging under the weight of staff vacancies, nurses and techs, and how folks on the hospital's marketing team were volunteering to transport patients. And he wants to be clear that, we can and we should talk about how to solve our current crisis, but that right now he's just trying to get through every day.
It isn't only the pandemic we need to be talking about. It's the after, when the tsunami recedes and what's left in its wake is a depleted patchwork of people trying their best to care for those who will continue to need it.
One moment that sticks out from that essay, I remember, is the part where he says his colleague hands him a Hershey Kiss while he's sitting at his desk. That little moment, something as small as a Hershey Kiss, can mean so much when you're going through all this stuff at this time,
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Anil and his colleagues are doing the very best that they can. And now they're being slammed with RSV and flu and all manner of other diseases that were allowed to fester during the height of the pandemic because folks just couldn't be seen. So cancer and heart disease and strokes and all sorts of stuff. You're picking up on the positive point in the piece. That was one of the pieces that resonated with me too, is just people just really trying to do their best and hold each other up.
Yeah.
And he starts that essay by talking about Station 11, which is a book by Emily St. John Mandel, right? And it was an HBO series.
I started that series and I was like, nope, I've had enough of this.
Couldn't do it. Understandably, because it's about a worldwide flu pandemic that wipes out like 99% of the world population. And there's a thing in the show, and it really resonates now. And he quotes it, and he says, there is no before. And there's no more before times. And I think, we're living in the after now. And it's unsustainable.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's really feeling.
So now that brings us to the next essay I want to talk about, the COVID anger. this is something that, if you're someone who's been following the rules and wearing your mask and, you're thinking about your neighbor and you see what's going on, you're looking at folks who aren't wearing a mask and you're like, what are you doing? And like families and friends are having disagreements about this type of thing. Talk to us about that essay, because that was another one that I said, man, this feels like it's written for me here.
That's good. And I think it holds up. We published that piece in February, and it's still just as salient now as it was then, unfortunately. So the author of that piece is a woman named Molly Colvin, and she is a developmental neuropsychologist. She's an assistant professor of psychology at Harvard Medical School. And she is someone I've turned to at a few really key points of inflection in these past few pandemic years to understand what the heck is going on in our brains. At the time when I wrote her, I was thinking about how life during the height of the pandemic was really, really scary, but it was also really simple in a certain sense. Like, we knew what we had to do and you just did that thing. And now we're in this in-between state where life is much more complicated than it ever was before. And she ended up writing a piece about COVID anger.
The emotion is a primal one, arising from deep in our brains. Like fear and sadness, it's something most of us would rather not feel, but it's part of the human experience. Untamed, anger can hijack our executive functions, making it hard to plan, organize, and reason. Anger can lead to misunderstandings about what other people believe. That's especially dangerous now, after 2 years of relative isolation, when people need a little grace from one another.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more from Cloe.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back. Let me ask you something. We've gotten more relaxed. People aren't as, vigilant as they were before with their masking and stuff like that. And I'll even say for myself personally, where I used to be super annoyed and even angry at some of the people out there who didn't want to wear their mask and all that other stuff. I'm just like, I care about it much less now. I'm way more chill about COVID protocols and things like that. So I'm much less angry. I wonder if, what kind of a difference have you seen in the responses you're getting now versus when the piece first came out?
My sense is that folks are less angry, and I think we've seen that borne out in the news too. At the time she wrote the piece, there was so much in the daily headlines about people throwing fits on planes and being really mean to restaurant workers and like road rage out the kazoo. And I think now what I'm seeing is just more sort of quiet resignation. Mm-hmm. People are tired of being angry all the time. The frustration, I think, is still there. I still think it comes out in different ways. And the example that you just shared personally is something that Molly talks about in the piece, is how anger has an effect of making us think in just black or white ways and reduces nuance because we want to reduce an uncertainty in our heads because we've had to deal with so much uncertainty. But ultimately, unless we work through the feelings of frustration and disappointment, unless we do that, we'll get stuck. And we need to work through it so we can start living in this after, whatever the after is, in the best way that we can.
Yeah. All right. So moving along, let's go to this final essay, which has nothing to do with COVID, but does have something to do with an issue that also, causes some distress among folks. College. You have a piece written by a mother writing about her son who didn't want to go to college.
So, yes, the author of this piece, her name is Erica Youngren, and she lives in a town where people don't ask if your kid is going to college, but where.
Yeah.
And this mindset just didn't really apply to her own son. And he told his mom in 2021, after he'd been admitted to several liberal arts colleges, that, Mom, actually, I don't think I want to do this. Like, I'm worried I'm going to be miserable. I kind of want to, do my own thing.
Smart kid,
right? And she wanted to hear her son, but also was worried that she was over-empathizing with him. And she's living in this community where these expectations that, you graduate from high school, you go to college, that's the path. But ultimately, she listened to him and they said, okay, they helped him get an apprenticeship as an audio engineer, which is what he was really interested in doing. And it turns out he's happy and successful. Now he's got the apprenticeship led to one job, which led to another. And in the end, I think it's really a piece about the courage it takes to say no to the thing that everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And giving your kid the freedom to sort of chart their own path.
Yeah.
I wondered why you were interested in it, what caught your eye about it.
It was just it's that simple, I think, because college is pushed on us at such a young age. Maybe less now because people are starting to see it for what it is, the flaws of the system. But, I'm just thinking when I was younger, I went to college and then I dropped out because I just wasn't ready. And then when I was an adult in my 30s and I was like, okay, I want to do something different, I went back to college and crushed it. Yeah, so that resonated, you know what I mean? And it just tells me that there are different paths. Everybody doesn't have to take the same paths, but, with the right support and community around you, you'll be fine,
Yeah. I mean, this piece got a lot of feedback on social media, over 500 comments on Facebook or something. Many echoed your sentiments, what you just said, and many were from parents who'd had similar revelations about their own children and had realized that the feelings of hurt or anger or disappointment that they may have felt upon their child deciding not to go or to drop out were really more reflective of what the parent was thinking than what the kid actually wanted. Mm-hmm. But then equally, there were some comments, which I thought were fair, about how Erica's case, her son is a member of a privileged family, the parents are highly educated and knew the things to do to help him along. Whereas in some families that doesn't exist. And so college in that case can provide the kinds of resources that can help a kid create that path for themselves. Mm-hmm. And so in some ways, this is a story about privilege.
Absolutely. I could see that part too. Before we go, I just want to get one last question in.
Sure.
What do you hope to see in 2023?
I hope we find some peace, honestly. I hope we find a little more calm in 2023 than we had in 2022. I hope we find more acceptance about where we are in the world and what the world looks like now and how we navigate it together. And I hope that Cognoscenti can continue to be a place where we wrestle with big questions about uncertainty. And also, I hope we can continue to be a place where we find connection, where our readers and our listeners can come together and feel not so alone.
Cloe, thanks so much for letting us be your first podcast appearance.
Daryl, you made it easy. Thank you.
That's senior editor for Cognoscenti, Cloe Axelson. Real quick, before we go, today WBUR will be doing live coverage as the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol insurrection holds its final public meeting. The committee will make announcements about criminal referrals to the Justice Department. You can hear WBUR's coverage live at 1 p.m. Monday throughout the day at 90.9 on the radio or at WBUR.org. And with that, thanks so much for listening to The Common. Please hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at WBUR The Common, or send us an email at thecommon@WBUR.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.